I'm delighted to be here to talk to you. My responsibility in AIB is to think a lot about SMEs, and I very rarely get a chance to come to County Meath. And the reason that this particular event is close to my heart is that I'm a Meath man. I'm from Dunshaughlin, born and reared, and live about 8 miles down the road. So I'm delighted to be here. And the theme, as Kevin outlined, that I want to talk about is picking up some of the things that Brendan touched on about the Irish economy and why this is such an important point. We're at a critical point after a really, really difficult period. And I want to reflect on that with you, maybe a little bit about our organisation, where we are, and in the context of particularly the SME market and the Irish economy and what we're seeing. And I do this by way of encouraging you to think about the positivity and the forward piece. And at the same time, I recognise that we still have a lot of challenges to get through. So that's the kind of themes I'm going to be covering. I want to maybe at the outset congratulate Gary O'Mara and the Enterprise Board and the team that put this together over this week. It's a very brave venture. And I think you have to admit that the product of what you've seen here today and over the course of this week is really, really good. It's probably a bit disappointing that it's not a full house this evening, but you know what, Rome wasn't built in a day. This is a great start on something that actually can really help businesses. More than ever, this is the time to be connected, because if you're going to grow into the future, you can't do it alone. You need other people. So I'm delighted that we're able to support it, and I want to congratulate the team on putting this together. So moving on, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about our organisation, but just a couple of key points, because for us too, this is a critical time in terms of our own journey as an organisation that essentially was broke and would not exist today was it not for the taxpayer. And we have been on a journey to absolutely focus on getting ourselves back to a better position. And the great thing about this year is that it's a key point for us, because it's a year we move back into profitability after very significant losses for a number of years. At the half year, we report a 437 million in profit, which is a 1.3 billion improvement in last year. And the reason I say that is because how important it is for us to build enough capital to repay the Irish government and eventually the taxpayer for what they've invested in us, and allow us to become a strong bank and support the Irish economy. And the only way we can do it is that when we have our own capital to do that. The signs of that improvement for us are we have a very difficult book of customers in difficulty. We've put a lot of effort and time into working with these businesses on a case-by-case basis, and we have almost 3 billion of reduction in our loan impairments at the half year, and that's partly due to that work, and that's a sign of an organisation moving to a different place. Some other key numbers there, I won't go through them all. On the mortgage side, we've seen 700 million mortgages sanctions in the first half of the year. This is a difficult time in the housing market, but we're delighted to see the progress there into supporting particularly first-time buyers during that period. And more importantly for tonight, I'm going to touch on this in more detail of the business sector, is the 5.6 billion in lending approvals in the first half of this year, up 33% on last year. The reason that's important is going back to the growth. We haven't seen that level of growth or that level of demand and credit over the last few years. And I want to talk a little bit about that to show how it's changing and maybe to give that confidence as to where we go. So to look and reflect maybe on the SME market, I'm not going to go into too many economic indicators, but I want to pick three that I think are really important for SMEs. The consumer sentiment in Ireland at the moment is at the highest level since 2008. In other words, it's got back up to where it was before the economic collapse. Number two, the domestic demand in the Irish economy, which has been very, very flat, is now starting to show growth, and we have a 1.5% indication. I think some of Brendan's numbers were even more positive coming from the Department of Finance this year. And another key one is that unemployment rate this year is at the lowest point of 11.5% since the economic crash. We've come down from 15.1%. So why did I pick those three economic indicators? The reality is that 95+% of SMEs depend on this economy, and it's a very small economy, and if it's not doing well, as you know, your business is not doing well. And these three indicators show that your customers are now more than ever in a better mindset. We're not out of the woods completely. There's still lots of issues floating around. We hear about them every day. But you know, sometimes you got to think of the positive side as well and the opportunity for the future. That consumer sentiment, which is only sentiment, is starting to trickle into demand. That's a really key change that wasn't evident over the last couple of years. That means more people are buying your goods and services. And the last part that's a really positive indicator, if the number of people employed in this country is increasing, well, guess what? They're buying, because they have salaries and wages to do so. And they are going to be what are going to support your business and help you to grow. So three very positive indicators that suggest that the future looks bright. And why is that important? Well, as SMEs, you've got to plan for that future. So there's been a lot of research done recently around this, and the Department of Finance has just issued some research that goes out to the SME market and looks at demand for credit and also the mindset of businesses. And what it's saying at the moment is that 84% of businesses are seeing a stable or improving business with 48% increasing turnover. Now, that's just numbers, but actually that's a significant improvement of where things were. So the economic indicators they're describing are starting to feed through now to businesses and their sentiment. 56% of SMEs have recorded a profit this year. That's up 5% on last year. Now, 5% might be a big number, but I can tell you that comes on the back of a period of a very negative view in terms of profitability. 30% of SMEs have increased their staff numbers in the past 6 years, and I guess that reflects back to the reduction in unemployment. And business sentiment is increasing, with 58% of all SMEs agreeing that the business, I should have clicked these on, shouldn't I? Sorry, you could have seen them there. That their business climate will improve in the next 6 months. So things are really good, aren't they? Well, not everything's good, of course. And I reflect, if I use a local example of where things are, in my own hometown at Dunshaughlin, when I walk up the main street and I see the empty retail units, we're not out of the woods yet. But it's a yin-yang here. We've got to look to the positivity and at the same time accept that not everybody is benefiting at the same point yet. But it's the beginning of a growth period. We did some work at the beginning of the collapse and the crisis with PwC, and what they did some research across countries across the world that experienced the type of economic collapse that we had. And unfortunately, the bad news is that what they found was it typically takes 10 years for countries to get back into whatever the new reality of growth is. The good news is we're 6 years through it and we've 4 years to go, and we're seeing some really very positive signs. And the outlook for the Irish economy started to look very positive, but it's still a journey, I suppose. I make that point. On the other side of it, for companies that are exporting, it can be a slightly different story. As a matter of interest in the room, how many people are exporting? 1, 2, 3, 4. And I know I spoke to John a few minutes ago, who was just getting into that market. It can be very different if you're in the export market. 77% of exporters would say that this year they've seen growth in their business, and 86% of them expect to see growth next year. This is a very small economy, and maybe the problem with the 4 in the room, not the problem with the 4, is the fact that it's only 4. More people have got to look to export. We've got to look to the bigger world as well, because it can make such a difference to a business, and I know that's something Enterprise Ireland focuses very heavy on, and it is an important fact as well. So a couple of dynamics there that are impacting the Irish economy. A lot of positives. From our point of view, I'll share what we're seeing a little bit on the ground. And maybe the first point to make is that, we see us getting back to profitability, which is wonderful. It wouldn't happen without SMEs. And people maybe sometimes, there's a lot of misinformation in the public domain about banks and what they do and what they don't do. We would not get back to where we are if we're not supporting SMEs. And that means lending to SMEs. And that means lending to SMEs who will help the growth in the Irish economy. What we're seeing over the course of the year, just going to these numbers, which are half-year numbers, you'll have seen from the video, some of them are actually more positive, which is a 9-month information. 2.6 billion in lending approvals up to June of this year. That's up 42% on last year. We haven't seen that level of growth before. And sanctioning is when we sanction money. We agree to lend money to people. The most important part is when they actually draw it and use those funds to invest in their business or whatever they want to do. And our drawdowns, we're seeing, are up about 30%. To give you a sense, in the Meath or North East region, our lending here in this region so far this year has been €224 million, and that's up 37% on where it was last year. Now, they're just big numbers, and I know sometimes people get, yeah, whatever, they're big numbers. I suppose the most important part I'm pointing to is the upward trajectory and the positiveness that's starting to creep through in what we're seeing in demand. Demand for credit was not here in this country, and demand for credit, to Brendan's point, is an issue right across Europe at SMEs in a relatively flat economy. And it's only when businesses start to borrow and invest in their business that the economy starts to grow. And that's critical for us and indeed for the Irish economy. So in terms of what we're seeing at the moment, it's about 600 sanctions a week that we're sanctioning, and that's a significant growth than where it was last year. So if that's happening, which is great, what are we doing to actually respond to that? So one of the things we've done is put a new business teams around the country. We have 3 in Dublin, in Galway and in Cork, and that's important because we want to tap into that growth. And what they're looking at is new business to us and supporting new businesses that are looking to try and develop themselves in the Irish economy, dealing with a number of different situations, from new businesses to us, our own businesses, or indeed banks or businesses who have been with banks that are exiting the Irish economy and who find themselves stuck, and that's another aspect of the business as well. When we talk about SMEs, sometimes it's a disservice to use the term SME, small and medium-sized enterprise. That says that all your businesses are the same, which, as you know, they're absolutely not. Every sector is different in terms of where it's at, its needs. And it's one of the things we've realised and learned in the last couple of years. So our outward focus to the SME market is done very much on a sectoral basis, and we put in place sectoral teams that understand those sectors in a much deeper way to help us understand what those sectors needs, and also to help engage with those sectors in a much deeper way than we have in the past. Those people are in place. Many of them are not bankers. They're actually people that come from those sectors, and that helps us learn in more detail what needs to be done. And part of that work, we've been doing a lot of research with industry bodies across those sectors and developed reports over the last probably 18 months. They're on our website and you can use them. And they're independent research about each sector to find out specifically what's happening there and what needs to be done. And from that, we've also learned what we need to do as a bank. And in many cases, what it's meant is that we've actually put funds in behind to support those sectors. So the types of funds we've launched over the last while, in the energy sector, 2 types of funds. One to help small businesses help reduce their costs, which is energy efficiency. It's actually a very simple way to increase your profitability. Doesn't mean losing people, it means investing some money, and there are great opportunities to do that. And we put a fund and a process in place to try and make that easier for businesses to make that investment and increase their profitability. And secondly, we've also put a 200 million fund together for the energy renewable sector, looking at things from anaerobic digesters to wind farms. The export side is a critical part of our business. It's a part, to be honest, that we've had to rebuild ourselves and our capability, and we put a 200 million euro fund behind that to try and support exporters. We recognise that around the country, our own capability for exporters had to be addressed. We've put in place 85 export champions in our network to make sure that when an exporter comes to us, we're able to understand their needs and actually deliver for them. The agri sector is one of the most progressive sectors at the moment. I would estimate that certainly north of 30% of our new money is going into the agri sector, particularly the dairy sector. I'm not sure, there's probably not many farmers here this evening, but the dairy sector is investing in a sector that will see a milk quota reduced next year. And we have one farmer? Yeah, well done, thank you. And they're investing in that sector because there's an opportunity to scale up in the dairy sector. So people are investing in stock, people are investing in land, or people are investing in capability. And it also resonates across other agri sectors as well. It's a very particularly strong time for the agri sector, but not without its difficulties, as we've seen in the beef sector. Property is another area we've put funding behind. That might be a difficult word, and given everything that happened, but we put a property fund in place to try and support what is a real issue in the Irish economy, which is a shortage of housing. And it's going to take a number of years to resolve that. Our 350 million euros fund is for residential properties in the particular hotspots where there is a shortage and the particular type of housing that's needed by people. And that's what we're trying to mobilise to try and support that particular initiative. And finally, the healthcare sector is another sector that's seeing an awful lot of growth from a variety of areas, particularly the nursing home sector, where there's a really serious shortage of beds. And it's going to take considerable investment to do that. And we've seen a lot of investment in this area. Moving on, and maybe to finish up, you'd have seen in the video this concept of backing brave, and I just want to take a minute just to talk about it, because in AIB, one of the things we've had to do is reinvent ourselves. I think other than our great customers and the actual logo you see, everything else about our organisation is different than where it was. And we've had to reinvent ourselves given everything that happened. And one of the things in looking at the SME sectors, we realised, you know what, we know a lot, we like to think we know a lot about businesses, about running a business in terms of the financials, but we aren't SMEs and we don't run businesses. And when we look out to your sector and the people that we deal with all the time, the one thing we have to acknowledge is the bravery of anybody that starts their own business, gives up a pensionable permanent job with a concept that they have to sell to the world, that are prepared to put their own savings in the line, invest in something that they believe in, that they're willing to take on somebody and pay them. I heard reference in the panels earlier on of borrowing money from the credit union. I think it was John that mentioned it in terms of paying salaries. You know, the responsibility, as you all know as entrepreneurs, of what you have to do every week. And as a bank, we acknowledge that bravery and what people have to do to run their business. And that's interesting. But what we want to do is back brave, and we want to back that bravery and support people. And that's a statement from us which you can go, yeah, that's fine. But we want to run this program over a multi-year, over a number of years, and put behind it proof points that actually show that we want to help you and demonstrate how we can support brave customers. So there's 3 there listed which we started launching, and you may have seen this in some of our campaigns. We recognise that for small businesses, small amounts of money are needed quickly and efficiently, and banks have been challenged. They've been too slow in decisions up to now. So we have put structures in place where we will deliver a decision on €30,000 loans within 48 hours. And that's been live since the 10th of September, and we've been achieving that. So somebody can take confidence if they're going in for a small amount of money that they're going to get a decision in 48 hours, so at least they know where they stand. Secondly, we recognise that you're working very, very long hours, and we're not. our branches open and close at times that don't necessarily suit your business. So we put an SME desk in place with specialist people who are available from 8 in the morning till 9 at night, working 6 days a week to try and support businesses. And they are now doing a significant amount of business over the phone at a convenient time for customers. And finally, startups are a critical part of the Irish economy in the future. And we are now seeing in Ireland the greatest growth in startups that we've ever seen. We have a particular culture in Ireland that's very entrepreneurial, and we're trying to do our best to support that. We've just, this week actually, we have an Irish Times, a partnership with the Irish Times and an academy for SMEs in Ireland for startups, where we want to try and support SMEs and give them a bolster to try and get them going. And we've run a competition where we've had hundreds of entries from startups. We've nominated 10 companies that are going to go through intensive training. And then out of that, we're going to pick a winner who will get a very significant prize that will actually probably transform their business, as well as a whole range of networking events to provide support to startups, because we recognise their importance for the future of the economy. So, quick, rushed race through. In terms of where we are, I suppose the only message what I'm trying to touch on, and we can pick it up in the panel, is the importance perhaps of this critical point and the need to look to the future and take the positivity and take the leap and move on. Thank you very much.